There you go.
There you go.
Perfect.
Sorry about that. Hello. Welcome. Sorry, we're a couple of minutes late starting again. I feel like we haven't done one of these for a while, so I couldn't remember all the technical bits and how to get it going. But thankfully, we're live on the right page this time, for those of you that were here last time and I went live on the wrong one. I'm here, obviously Laura's here, and then tonight we've got Alex with us from Lighttz Out, because we're going to talk all things sleep. Hello, Alex.
Hello, or lack of, as the case may be.
So should we kick off then? If you could tell us, Alex, a bit about yourself and your journey and how you help mums, and then we can get into the next bit.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm Alex. I have a 3-year-old son, and he is the reason why I do what I do. He was, and still can be, horrendous at sleeping. He's an IVF baby. So when he was being a pain, I waited because I felt guilty, because I went through a lot to get him. So I didn't get any help till he was 18 months. He used to get up at 4, half 4 in the morning, did do for about 7 months, and I was at my wit's end in quite a bad state. So I hired a sleep consultant, and it was that much of a game changer. I never went back to my 20-year career in recruitment, and I've never looked back since, because it changed my life. And maybe having a baby in lockdown, I felt like I wanted to do something that would help people. I'm a bit old to become a doctor, so this was the next best thing. I'm also not as bright to be a doctor, so that's what I do. So I help mums and dads across the country with their children up to the newborn, up to the age 7, that don't sleep. And yeah, I absolutely love it.
Brilliant. So I was going to ask you about periods of struggle you've had, but I think we've just gone there, haven't we, in terms of sleep deprivation? And I think it's probably one everybody watching is familiar with. So in terms of sleep and babies and babies, children, and keeping mum's expectations real on this, do you feel that the support out there is enough? Because there seems to be sort of so many differences in opinions. There's also a lot of peer pressure around sort of sleeping through the night. But from your perspective, do you think there is enough for mums and everybody's fully informed enough and access to the right things?
Nowhere near. I mean, I'm probably going to do myself out of a job if the government decide to put changes in place. But for me personally, when you have a baby, everyone is very quick to tell you how to feed them, how you're going to birth them, and all these. No one tells you about sleep. No one told me anything apart from your baby's not going to sleep and you're never going to have the life that you had before, blah blah blah. But there was no actual support, and even now when I speak to mums, you know, and they're going to health visitors, and it's very, very basic, you know, with what they've been told, or they're like, oh yeah, well, it'll get better, when actually the research states that about 80% of babies with sleep issues will still have them until they're about age 5, which is terrifying. So no, in answer to your question, I don't think there's anywhere near enough support out there, which is a shame, because in other countries there really is, but we seem to be a bit backward at it in this country, I'm afraid.
Not the first time we've heard that either.
Weird that.
Bit of a theme. So can you tell us about some experiences, obviously not individual people, but can you share some stories about how you've helped people, or what kind of things you've brought and how that sort of made a difference?
Yeah, I mean, they all range. They all fundamentally tend to come down to the same issue, which I'm sure we'll come to later. So I've had several mums recently that are breastfeeding mums. Now, a lot of people will say, well, if you're breastfeeding, you can't sleep train your baby. You need to get them on formula to get them sleeping through the night, which is absolutely not true. I've had a couple of mums that their babies are over 12 months old and they are feeding over 10 times a night. Now, I only breastfed for 3 months and that was enough for me. How you can possibly do that and maintain a job and your sanity is beyond me. So I've had several cases like that, where after 2 weeks, we've had that child sleeping 11 to 11 and a half hours uninterrupted after the 2 weeks, straight through, no feed. So I've had that. I've also obviously had the escaping toddler, which is really common. I have also had a 7-year-old case where the mum just didn't have a life. And, you know, a lot of these things, a lot of the cases I'm dealing with are multiple wake-ups at night, or they're not napping. And if they are napping, it's not for very long. And so far, you know, we've had huge successes. Some of the cases I've had in the last couple of weeks have blown me away. Those kids have smashed it in night too. Now, anyone watching, I'm not saying that I can fix your baby in 2 nights, by the way. It normally takes at least a week to get about 70% improvement. But these kids have smashed it, and it's just with certain tweaks that needed to happen to fall in place. And we got success, and it's amazing. So any issue, as long as it's not a medical issue, can be sorted.
Brilliant.
It gives everyone some hope then, doesn't it?
I think so. And I think a lot of, you know, people, so I trained with a company that's predominantly American, and in America, sleep training your child is just what you do. You have a baby, you hire a sleep consultant, it goes hand in hand. So over there, it's just normal. But over here, we seem to be very judgy, or we put really like strong words around it, you know, or it's damaging, it's cruel, it's traumatizing, you know, all these really strong words around it, and it puts people off. And I still think there's a shame in this country where you're almost shamed if your kid doesn't sleep through the night, that it sometimes reflects of you as a parent. At least 3 of my families have admitted to lying when someone said, does your baby sleep through the night? And they've gone, yeah, and they don't.
I was a bit like that though at one point in the very early bits, because I was just fed up of I don't know, you'd arrive at whatever group it was, and it was one of those, you know, is your baby sleeping? Oh, mine's sleeping this and mine's that, and I'm getting this. And I was thinking, oh no, mine aren't. But I was fed up of whatever you said. People always had 1,000,001 helpful suggestions, which you'd probably been there before, because nobody's daft, are they? They try everything anyway. And then, but the bit for me, but sometimes I found that the people that were saying their children kind of sleeping through, then in the next conversation, was like, oh yeah, and I was up because his dummy came out, and up because of this, and up because of that. And I was thinking, but then it's not really a through if you're up all these times to do different things. And I felt like they were kind of not portraying a true reality. But like you say, you end up just going, oh yeah, because you don't want to admit that actually you're struggling and you can't get yours to sleep. I mean, Phoebe, my eldest, was horrendous to 15 months. I just had no sleep for 15 months. Then all of a sudden, click, she went the other way. But yeah, it's just really difficult to be open sometimes when, like you say, you feel like there's that judgment on you because, oh gosh, everyone's is and mine isn't, failing again. And we always put that kind of pressure on ourselves.
Yeah, totally. And I put a post on quite a few months ago, and I, you know, when you're sort of about to put a post on, you think, oh God, I shouldn't post that. That sounds really bad. And it was basically saying, you know, honestly, I started to resent my son. You know, it was that hard, and I thought that's really bad. Like I adore every hair on that kid's head.
No, I think it's honest.
You know, and it should be okay for people to be honest, and you know, it's a shame that pretty much every parent that I speak to on that first call cries, and then I cry, and then it's just a big snot off on the phone. But it you know, and that's really sad that we have to get to that point of breaking in order to get help, and that's where I think we have some big problems over here.
Yeah, maybe for some parents that's the first time they've ever really been fully honest about it, and then saying it out loud, kind of sharing it, it's like a weight, isn't it, even before you get into working out how you can help them.
Oh yeah, you know, I do like 1-hour consultations with people, and at the end of it they've just gone, do you know what, Alex, I'd have just paid just to talk in a non-judgmental space. Yeah. And again, that's really sad that we don't have those resources available to parents.
No, and I really liked a post you put on not long ago around, I think you were talking about, I don't know, somebody come to you with whatever case it was, but it was just to be clear, this isn't me saying that that's a problem or being judgmental in any way. It's if the mum is coming to you because it is a problem for them and they can't deal with it anymore, then yes, that's fine. But I like the approach of the you do you, because I think that's what we're all about here, in terms of like, yeah, absolutely, if you're more than happy doing whatever you're doing and it works for you, then that's absolutely fine. I don't think anybody should fall under peer pressure to follow a certain pattern, but I just like the way you kind of address that as well, in terms of that's fine, because people can be quite negative as well on social media, can't they? They're always quite quick to sort of jump on and be, yeah, like, oh,
yeah.
actually it's this parenting style, and it's like, actually you weren't saying that at all. It was a case of, but if it's a problem for you and it is a problem that we need to sort, then that's fine. But if it's not for someone else, then that's fine as well.
It's, you know, it's like the dummy debate or the co-sleeping debate or whatever. You know, it's like people say to me, oh, you know, should I get rid of the dummy? You know, and it's like, well, the dummies are only a problem when they're a problem for you. Co-sleeping is only a problem when it's a problem for you. If you're quite happy and cracking on, your kid's got a dummy age 3, go with it. Don't try and fix it if it's not broken. But if you're feeling it's not working, something's got to change, because if you're not happy, you're not giving that kid 100% of what they deserve as well. So I'm a big advocate of, yeah, you do you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can tell from all the questions we've had in already that it is a problem for lots of reasons for lots of parents, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so.
And I had an extra question jump in on the phone just before we started, so I'll add that to the bottom of the list, and then we'll check and see if there's any more come in after, if that's okay. But people probably just want us to get on with the nitty gritty and give them the detail that they all desperately want to hear around how they're going to get the sleep tonight.
Right, no problem. Hit me.
Right, first up is, have you got any advice on how to battle the bedtime delays or the I can't sleeps?
Oh yeah.
I think kids study procrastination techniques in the womb. I really do.
Oh, they're masters there. And do you know what? I use the word manipulation a lot, and it's an awful word to use about children. But from about the age of sort of 15 to 16 months, they start to pick up on what's called cause and effect. So cause and effect, and they master it when they're a toddler, is that they learn that their actions will get a certain reaction. So obviously the bedtime battles, if they're really giving it gung-ho and you're giving them lots of attention and loads of options of, do you want this then? Do you want that? Do you want this? Do you want that? Do you want this? They're just think, oh yeah, I'll just keep doing this because you're just going to give me a lot back. So it's really making sure that you're sticking to your boundaries. So with regards to them, sort of, did you say they were coming in at night, or was this just, remind me that?
I think it's just that I can't sleep, so I can't, you know, so probably a bit of getting up, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, so the I can't sleep can be two things. It can be pushing the boundaries and stalling techniques, which my son's a master of, or there could genuinely be they're scared, and that can really kick in from sort of age 2 and 3. Now you hear of people sort of saying, oh right, well don't worry if you don't want to go to bed, I'll go in with the monster spray and all that. Okay, that's the worst thing that you can do, because all you're doing is giving them the thing that actually, yeah, there is a monster in there, and I'm going to take it out with this water spray. So anything like that you need to be really careful of. A lot of the time when kids don't want to go to bed, it could be a case that they're overtired. It could be a case that they've been sat watching a TV program. So with a toddler, for example, with my own son, if he's watching something and I literally say, right, bed, we're off for a bath, and take him, he will lose his mind. So it's making sure that we've got a good bedtime routine that sets the scene for them going to bed. Obviously we can look at how much sleep they're having in the day. Is that impacting? Do they genuinely not feel tired enough? Or are they overtired and now they've sort of lost their mind a bit? So there's a two-pronged attack to it.
Okay. Thank you. I think we're probably all experiencing that one. I don't get it that often from my eldest, I have to say, but when she does it, she's a complete master.
They are the remote, and it's how you react to it that seals the deal.
Yeah. Sometimes you feel so mean, don't you? But you've just got to be firm. Well, I have to be firm with mine.
They've got to be, because if you don't, what I found as well with older children is when they've got sleep issues at night, what we have to do is do like a hygiene of the behavior in the day first. Because what tends to happen, so this is, I've recently read a paper on this. So let's say in the day your child is like, I want that cookie, or I want that, and I want that, and you're just like, oh, do you know what? Oh my God, just take it. Just take it. Okay, so at the time in the day, you've got that option, so they can have that option. Now, when you go into bed, they've not got that option. So it's like, no, you need to go to bed. There is no other option here available. And that just sends them west, because in the day, they're used to having the opportunity to push and push and push, and you're going to cave anyway. So at bedtime, how can we expect them to be any different? How can we expect them to flip that way?
It's a really good point.
I thought it was fascinating, and it makes so much sense with older children, especially. So you have to sort of tidy up your daytime and get a little bit strict. I'm not saying you need to go like full on Hitler with it, but you do need to be like, actually, no, that's you can't have that. Like, it's a no. And they are going to lose their mind, but then at least they'll be more prepared for bedtime when they know no means no.
Never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
The next one is, my child seems to hit every sleep regression. She has just turned 3 and for the last few weeks has decided she doesn't need any sleep. She's buzzing from 6:30 a.m. until 9 p.m. Please tell me that this is the last regression and that she will start going to bed and sleeping very soon.
Okay, so I have a bit of a beef with regressions and leaps and all these types of things, because there's certain things out there, and they're like, you get these text messages and say, your child is going to the 945th leap and they're going to become Satan and they're going to do this. And I mean, how not helpful is that?
Storm cloud, whatever it is, on the calendar.
Yeah, you just think, well, it's like the text of doom, isn't it? And I used to get them and think, oh my God, he can't get any worse than this. So if you do have anything like that, I delete it because it's not helpful. There are regressions. Okay, now the only one that is really cemented with evidence is the 4-month sleep regression. Okay, there is a reason for that. So that is when babies go from having 2 sleep stages, light and deep, to 4 sleep stages, which means here they've had deep sleep for 50% of their time. Now it's 25. That's a big shift. Okay, so that is a genuine regression. And that's why a lot of families come to me about age 7 months, because they've tried to push it for as long as they can. They've got to like 7-8 months and go, I can't do this anymore. This is like horrendous. Now, a regression, or you call it a progression, because what happens is they go through so many stages of development, any stage of development, whether they are learning to walk, crawl, run, read, anything can throw sleep off. Anything.
Of course.
So anything gets their little cogs in their brain going. So yeah, I'd love to say that age 3 there's going to be no regressions, but there will be as soon as they start learning a new skill, because it's a lot for their little brains and they've got to like put it into little boxes and stuff. And
we do it as grown-ups as well, though. I was thinking about this the other day because, well, probably actually when I was going through whatever with Emily, well, we learned to snowboard quite late on. I was about 28, I think. But while we were there on the course doing it at night, it sounds ridiculous, but I'd wake up because my feet were doing what they needed to do, because your brain's processing like what you're supposed to do, the new skill. And I think I remember it from driving as well, because I mean, now you drive on autopilot, don't you? You don't think about doing it, but when you are learning, you don't. And it used to be, so I must have been in a different stage of sleep, or not as heavy a sleep, I don't know, for my brain to be doing whatever it was doing and then keep waking me up with my feet doing what they were doing.
Yeah. So so with regards to it, that mum by all means can reach out to me, because it might be a different issue. It could be something else that just needs a slight tweak that's causing that problem. It can be something really straightforward, or it might need something that needs a couple of weeks to work through together. But it can all be sorted. But they can be having regressions forever.
So could it be something like a change in routine? So like our eldest have just started reception this year. So things like that, could that send them a bit haywire at night because they're processing and they've got all these new, Alice talked to us about these new rules and things that they've learned at school, and obviously new friendships, new routines throughout the day, longer days, more days at school. Can things like that, or is it more if they're learning like a new skill and processing that?
Anything really, because their brains are like developing like amazing. I mean, I'm not a brain or a specialist of any description, but they're taking on that much data. they've got to work it through and put it into, I always imagine it like a filing cabinet, you know, and it's a lot for them to take on. You know, I would imagine when you get, my son's obviously thankfully not at high school yet, but when he does that, that'll probably throw his sleep off.
Yeah.
You know, when you go on holiday, most people that throws sleep off, especially when you get back. So yeah, any big change, we can expect a bit of a regression. I will say though, if people are having an issue that's gone on for more than 2 weeks, that's when you probably need to get some sort of help, because a lot of the time it can sort itself out if it is just like they've learned a skill or something like that. But if it's, I always say, because some mums will phone me on like night 1 and go, my kid didn't sleep last night, I need to book a package. And I'm like, just give them a bit of time. Do you know what I mean? Let's just, if this is continuing for 2 weeks, then that's a problem. If it's not, they'll snap out of it. But yeah, it's just something to bear in mind. If it's been going on for a long time, it's probably something that needs changing.
What about amount of sleep as well? So I'm just conscious on that one. It said, I've just worked out in my head, 9 p.m. till 6:30 a.m. is, I'm going to get this wrong unless I do it again, 9.5 hours, isn't it? Sleep. So
Yeah.
Is that for a 3-year-old? Is that just, could it be that that's just her 9.5 is enough, or is that nowhere near enough for a 3-year-old? I haven't got a clue.
It depends on the child, okay, because a lot of kids will have different levels of sleep needs. It sounds a bit low. They probably do need,
I mean, I think
earlier.
I'd struggle if it was only 9.5, because you don't get an evening, do you? And then you're up first thing as well.
No, so for me, your sweet spot for that age is like between 7 and 8 o'clock. The reason being, bit of science, so around 7 and 8 o'clock, the body produces the sleep hormone melatonin. That's at its peak. Also, natural sleep pressure, which builds over a 24-hour period, is also at its peak. So they're working together. So it's a sweet spot for them to go to sleep. Anything past that, they're going to become overtired, which means they will produce the hormone cortisol, which is the adrenaline hormone, which hinders the production of melatonin, which gives us
the whole overtired thing.
Yeah. So it's people like me harp on about overtiredness all the time, but undertiredness is also a thing as well.
Oh, what's that? Being dim.
So you could have a child that is sleeping too much. So they could be napping.
I feel like that would be a luxury.
I know, crazy, right? So I remember there was a family, if I remember the numbers now. So I think they were napping for about 11 months, 12 months old. They were napping for about 4 hours a day. Happy days. Going to bed at 6, then waking up at 3 or 4 in the morning. Good to go. So when you do the maths with that, they were hitting their sleep quota in 24-hour period at 3 or 4 a.m. You can't make them sleep. If they've hit the quota, they've hit the quota. And also, so that's one thing, they can be undertired, and that's why they're having a wake. Also, if you've heard of the danger nap, so if you have if your little one has a nap too close to their bedtime, what happens is the sleep pressure will have dropped and it won't have built up enough for them to be tired to go to sleep. People laugh at me because I always compare kids to pressure cookers.
No, I've heard that one.
Yeah. And you know, they release, like you do with the pressure, it drops, and you've got to give it time to build up. So if your kid has a danger nap at 4 or 5 o'clock and they're age 3 in the car, you're gonna have a late bedtime, and that's just the way it's gonna have to be.
I think we've all been there though, haven't we? Like driving along, throwing snacks in the back, singing Wheels on the Bus as loud as possible just to keep them awake for the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, all the windows are down. I've got my 90s dance tracks on. I'm singing at the top. Nothing. But however, he'll wake up when like a floorboard creaks in the house 3 doors down. He'll wake up then. But no, he won't when I need him to not have a danger nap. So
love it, thank you. The next one says, my 2-year-old gets up between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. every morning and won't settle back to sleep for more than 30 minutes. This was a pattern for a while, from 12 to 20 months, and we seem to overcome it, but now it's back. Okay, so this is, again, a couple of reasons for this. I mentioned briefly then about melatonin. So melatonin is this lovely sleepy hormone. And if you can take yourself back before you had children,
you know, it will start producing at 4 o'clock ish in the afternoon. You'd go and have a bath, a glass of wine, you'd feel nice and relaxed. It's because that hormone's producing. Okay. At about 3 or 4 in the morning, that hormone stops producing and the body starts producing cortisol. If the body didn't produce cortisol, we wouldn't wake up. And this goes back to when we were cavemen and women, okay, and we were going to get eaten by a bear. So it's a natural thing that the body does. So that's really common why kids wake at that time. Another reason why they wake at that time, and it's something everyone needs to bear in mind because it's getting colder, I don't know what's going on with the weather today, is the temperature. Your body temperature drops to the lowest around that period of time, and also the temperature outside tends to get to its coldest. So that's another thing that can trigger a wake and seal the deal. Also, like I say to everybody, how you react when your little one wakes seals the deal. So whatever you're doing, let's say with my son, when he woke, I would give him a bottle because I just thought he was hungry. And all I did was give gratification or reward for that wake. And their little body just clicks into it then as, oh, this is what I do. Right, okay. Right, I'm going to get up at this time every day. So yeah, that melatonin is a huge thing around that time.
So what's the best thing to do then in terms of not giving them a reward? Just tell them to be quiet and go away again.
Pretend you haven't heard them.
Depending on
that's easy with the first one, isn't it? When they're on their own. When the second one comes and you don't want the first one to be awake, the whole scream it out different.
Exactly, and it depends on the age of the child. You know, so as they're getting a little bit older, you know, I've spoken to my son through the monitor and gone, get back into bed. You know, the toddler clocks are a really good idea, because they obviously show you what time they can get out of bed, which is acceptable. So for toddlers, that's really good. For sort of babies and up, we've got to be a little bit more gentle in how we do it. We can offer different forms of settling for them, but it's keeping it to a minimum, so you're not giving them too much, but obviously you're still going to go to them. It's not like, you know, people talk about the cry it out method. I mean, that is literally put your kid in a room, shut the door and leave them till the morning. I'm not on board with that personally. Me neither. But it's not, you know, but people also have to accept that when you do any form of training, or if you make any change, ignore training, if you make any change to a kid's sleep, they're going to be upset. Nearly swore there. They're going to be upset with you, and especially when they're little, the only way they can express that upset is to cry. So I do lots of different methods, and it's not one shoe fits all, and I often change it up as I'm working with families anyway, depending on the family and how well the little one's doing.
Okay, fab. Sorry, I'm trying to go down my list of questions here. Oh, how do I
similar?
how do I get my 3-year-old to stay in his bed? He keeps sneaking in at night.
Love this. Love this.
I think we all know that one, don't we? They're a bit like dogs. They just kind of somehow end up under the covers and you didn't notice. Well, maybe, sorry, other people's dogs might not. like little ninjas, but they're cute. So okay, so there's a couple of things you want to do here. You need to ensure that they've got a really clear, concise, repetitive bedtime routine, so they know what's happening every night. That's a really important thing, okay, because it's all about setting the scene to go to bed. Another good thing to do with toddlers, if they're sneaking around, it can often be that you know, I mentioned before about boundaries. So something you can do to sort of tickle their thing that they've got a bit of control when you're putting a toddler to bed, give them options. Now, I am not saying loads of options. So for example, my son tonight, he had an option of, they're both dinosaur pajamas because that's all he'll wear. Which one do you want to wear? You've got a choice, so he'll pick one. So it's giving them the choice. You know, which book would you like to read? You've got 4, you can pick 2. Giving them that, so it just makes them go to bed thinking that, oh, okay, I've got control of this a little bit. And believe it or not, that can actually help. It's all very much about establishing rules
and your expectations of them. If you're using a toddler clock, talk about it. So I made the mistake of a toddler clock with my son, and I didn't really talk about it in the day. I just put it in and said, right, when that goes yellow, you can get up. Okay, yeah, okay. So when the owl's awake, you can get up. Yeah, no problem, mum. Yeah. And I went to bed, and he woke up at like 5 a.m. telling the owl to wake up.
I love it.
Any other kid I've worked with, that's worked a treat, not my own. Ow, wake up, ow. Oh. So my point being is you need to set the expectations and the rules during the day. So, you know, I don't know, why can't I think of the kid's name? Ben, you need to stay in your bed tonight, okay? Because mummy would like you to stay in your bed because then we can do something fun tomorrow. You know, just something along those lines.
Yeah.
You can do rewards, okay? You can. I'm a bit funny. I'm a bit on the fence with rewards. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. With my son, it won't work because it will then just be, well, what's the next reward? What am I getting now? You know, I'm not expecting parents to start giving out Haribo at 7:30 in the morning. But you could, God, they're banned in this house. So no. So that's just something you can do. You can do something to work towards it. But if you are going to give a reward, you need to give it first thing in the morning. Okay, so you know, follow it through. With regards to the biggest thing is consequences. If they're getting out of their room, they need to know what will happen if they continue to get out of their bed and come into your room. So you'd give them a warning and a small consequence. Okay, I'm not on about, you know, you're not beating them with a stick or anything, but, you know, if you don't stay in your bed, then we can't do X or whatever. But you need to be really clear. And if they do it, then you say, if you do it again, this is what will happen. Again, it's just about setting the foundation so they know what to expect. And also, if they're sneaking in, you need to take them back. Like, and I obviously I say to the families, if you can use a gate, great. My son can scale a gate.
And mine.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Or just do this enough on it and scream if they can't, or kick it off. We've had that.
Yeah, and it's really hard. Like, I'm not sugarcoating this, but you have to remain as calm as you possibly can because they feed off it. Toddlers do not care whether you're shouting at them or laughing with them. They're getting a reaction.
Yeah.
So you lead them back to the room, say a key phrase, night, love you, you need to stay in your bed. Bosh. And you could do that 100 times a night, but until they get the message, you have got to keep doing it. And there's a final point, and it's a bit random, but if they are sneaking in and you don't hear them, you can get motion little alarms, not like a big house alarm, but you can have blue lights start flashing. So you can get that. You can also put a bell on your door. That can work. And then I've not done or recommended this, but you can put like tin foil or paper on the floor so you'll hear it rustle when they come in. Don't know if that would work, but it is a tip that people have given, but I've not had to get to that far. Normally the consequences, you know, if you don't stay in your bed, then I'm going to have to do your teddy's going to have to come and sleep with mummy tonight. That normally does it. And you're not taking the teddy away all night. You're just taking it away for small increments of time in order to get the reaction of, oh, I don't like that. Oh, no, I don't like that at all. And then you give it them back and say, okay, well, you need to stay in your bed then. But that's quite extreme, but it does work. And sometimes you need to be extreme.
But I'm really bad at the small this is going to make me sound like I'm horrendous. I'm really bad at the small consequences, not because I give massive ones and hit them with sticks. I don't mean it like that. I just mean sometimes, because the word consequence in my head, I think, sounds so massive. I can't think of anything to do. And then I struggle so much with the whole thinking of what a consequence would be that I just stall the whole thing and never get anywhere anyway. So I'm glad you gave some examples there. It was really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, there's loads I could waffle on about, but it depends on, some things will work with some families and some things won't. You know, people say, I'll take your iPad time away from you. Now that's okay, but you kind of need something immediate that's going to have an impact.
Yeah, I like the teddy analogy. I mean,
so you know, saying, well, you've got no iPad time tomorrow, they're probably thinking, yeah, all right, whatever. But if you do something that gets the snap of, I don't like that, then, you know, normally if they've had the door open, you say, well, you can't have the door open. So little things like that will work.
It's having that discipline yourself, isn't it, to keep doing it? Because I'm terrible. So they'll wake up and I'll put them back to bed a few times, and it gets to, I don't know, 1 or 2 in the morning, and you've done it however many times, you're knackered, you've got to get to work the next day. And then you just think, oh, you know what, I'll deal with it another time. But then before you know it, you then created this thing where it's okay and it's part of their bedtime routine to keep doing it. But it is hard, isn't it? It's different if you've got like a week off and no responsibilities and you can handle the tiredness, but most of the time you've got to be up for some reason the next day, and then you just think, oh god, even just a few hours of sleep will at this point will be helpful, rather than keep putting them back in. I know that's the wrong approach, but I've definitely been there before. You need to sleep.
And that's why if you're going to tackle anything like this, it can often take, you know, a good couple of days. You know, start it on a Thursday and accept the fact that Friday you're going to be no use at work, and then you've got a couple of days at the weekend to really tackle it head on.
I've even left mine in the bed and gone in their bed just to get some sleep before now. Yeah, again, I know it's the wrong answer, but
that's better than them bringing them, believe it or not. So when I have people that say to me, I've sleep trained them, then the kid's not well. Now I'm not going to say you can't go to your child if they're sick, because that's like a no go. You go to them. So after I'd sleep trained my son, he was quite poorly, I slept on the floor in his room, because if I brought him into my bed, that was never going to be unpicked. It would have been a nightmare. So, but I was never going to leave him. So I put my back out and lay on the floor. So that's absolutely fine. It's just, you just need to be careful that it's not consistent.
That's really helpful.
Good.
Got some things to do, Laura, haven't we?
We have. We're not shining examples of having sleep trained kids.
And do you know what, honestly, and I say this a lot in my posts, I do not sit in my ivory tower at all. And I suppose a lot of the stuff that I give as tips is because I've done it and it bit me on the bum. So yeah, I don't judge anyone, because I've been there and done it and got the t-shirt and made those, not mistakes, I've just done stuff that didn't help.
No, fair enough. The next question is on a slightly different vein. My child is 14 months old and still having bottles in the night in his cot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of things with this. One, please never leave a bottle with your child in their cot. Okay, it's not safe. Now, I didn't know this until I started doing sleep training, but actually it's quite dangerous. So any milk to be offered must, obviously when they're older and they've got a cup by the bed, that's a little bit different, but you know, putting them in with it, leaving a bottle and stuff in the cot, it's actually quite dangerous. So that's something that I always want to make sure that everybody's aware of, because it can call a whole, we don't need to go down the route, but it's a no. Also, drinking excessive milk, believe it or not, can actually hinder their sleep. So in some cases, yes, they'll fall asleep, but in other cases, actually the dairy keeps them awake. So you need to be really careful. And obviously, don't do it if they're falling asleep on the bottle, because we'll probably come to that in a bit. That's probably the most common issue that I have of why people have got sleep issues.
Actually, there is another one. Oh, actually, the next one down, I was going to say, I'm sure I'd seen something. A different age. It says, my 9-month-old has 3 bottles at night and won't settle without it. So I don't know if you want to cover that now and kind of combine the two. Yeah,
that's similar. Okay, so what was news to me? Now, I'm not waving the flag of how you feed your child. If you want to continue to keep feeding your child throughout the night and you're happy to do that and it works around you, then crack on. Okay, there's no problem. But if your kid is waking excessively during the night and it's impacting your life and your relationship and everything else, something's got to give. So the advice from the NHS is that once your child is 6 months and they are thriving and they're fine on the scale and everything's tickety-boo, technically, they don't need a night feed. Now, I was still feeding my son at 18 months and he would rinse a couple of 9-ounce bottles, no problem. I mean, he literally shot them. So in my head, I was like, well, he's hungry. Must be hungry. He's a big lad. Must be hungry. But they don't need it. Okay. So also what I would recommend to do with that last bottle, whether this one is like 9 months or however old, move that bottle to before you start your bedtime routine. If your little one falls asleep on that bottle every night, what's going to happen is when they go through a sleep cycle of 45 minutes-ish, they're going to wake and they're going to think they need a bottle again, because that's what they associate with going to sleep. And that's when you get babies that constantly need feeding throughout the night. So with regards to that, if you think that's what your little one will do, you can do 2 things. So the first thing you can do is do bottle, so bath, blah, 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 bottle, story, bed. If they are still falling asleep on that bottle, you need to move it before the bath downstairs. So you are removing that feed to sleep association.
Do you know what's absolutely mad though, and always baffles me about children? So like, I'm going to go back to toddlers really, I think, but you want them to say please and thank you. And you can go on and repeat it till you're blue in the face for 6 to 9 months for that habit to stick. Give them a bottle before bed once, boom. Why does all the wrong things stick instantly and then the other stuff takes forever? It drives me batty.
Yeah, no, they're so smart. And I think since doing this career, it blows me away how clever babies are. So I've got several babies that I've worked with that have learned, you know, I was talking before about cause and effect. They've learned that if they're sick or if they get a dirty nappy, mum or dad or both of them come into the room. The light goes on, blue flashing lights. I get a cuddle. They change the bed. I get changed. I get a cuddle. I might get another bottle of milk. And they program themselves and they can puke on demand.
No way.
Wow.
Or they headbang, or they do something else. Like there's loads of whole hosts of stuff, but it's learned behavior. But yeah, they can puke on demand. So clever.
Wowzer.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that was a new one for me. It wasn't in my training.
Next one's on the similar thing, I suppose. How to stop rocking a 21-month-old. Oh,
because
hang on, sorry, you froze then.
I'm at the back.
Yeah, sorry.
It's all right. First of all, if you're rocking a 21-month-old, if they're as big as what my son was, that's a back issue, because they're not little. And again, yeah, it's very similar. It's like a prop, so it's an association. So it's a bit of a weird scenario. But if I imagine that I picked you up, Gemma, and I rocked you to sleep, and I held you in my arms, and you fell asleep, and I've put you in the cot. Lovely. You then come to a light stage of sleep, and you wake up and like, where have you gone? Why am I here? This is all very odd. And they freak out. So we then think, right, we're going to go and do it again. We're going to have to pick them up, and then you're just in a vicious cycle constantly of doing it. So what you want to try and do is gradually work at putting them down more awake each time. So they might look like they're a bit dopey. Okay, try and put them down. Or they're looking a little bit, do you know what I mean? And gradually do it over a period of time. Or what you can do is if you're rocking, you could rock and pat their bum at the same time. Then you can stop rocking and just patting their bum. Then you can put them into the cot and pat the bum. So you've sort of carried something. It's a gentle method, but it does take a lot longer, but it does work. It does work. But yeah, it's just a gradual process, that one.
Wish I'd known that. I was a rocker and a whatever else to sleep, and the second that you angle, oh, here we go again. Yeah, fired off. But I didn't really think about that in the patting bum, the transition. Oh, if I'd known that 4 years ago.
If I'd have known all this, you know, and honestly, every day I'm a bit of a swat. I've got loads of books back here, and I'll just read it and go, oh my God, if I'd have known that, this wrinkle wouldn't be here, and neither this one. Yeah, but never mind.
Oh, Next one says, baby always wakes crying their eyes out. They also won't sleep for more than 45 minutes at a time.
That links to something you said earlier, doesn't it, about the sleep patterns, is it?
Yeah. If a baby, they're no different to adults. Like, honestly, this morning when my son decided to wake up at stupid o'clock, I could have cried my eyes out. The reason being is I'm still tired. It's just plain and simple as that. So if your little one wakes up from naps or asleep or whatever and they're crying, it's because they're still really tired. So what you would probably need to do for a period of time is shorten their wake windows, which is the amount of times that they're awake between sleep sessions, whether that's a nap or bedtime, because it might be too big. So that's something to look at. Briefly touched on it before, the 45 minutes is the sleep cycle. So that is because there is something that you're doing to bridge the gap from awake to sleep. And whatever that is, that's where you need a bit of help with unpicking it. It's fascinating. I love it. I think it's dead interesting.
Oh, my 2-year-old's only just in the last sort of week or 2 weeks stopped waking up crying. It didn't matter what it was, she would just wake up. The other one was fine, younger, she'd be quite happy chattering away in a cot, but not the youngest one.
Yeah.
And the last one on here is how to transition from a cot to a toddler bed.
Okay, this is a big one for me. I get quite emotional about this. Please, if anyone is watching this and your little one is under age 3, do not move them to a toddler bed unless it's unsafe. Okay, so if you have a climber, I had a climber, okay, he's still a climber, then obviously that's a safety issue. I had to, with my own son, put a sleeping bag on inside out and back to front because he learns how to get out of that as well. So that will help them, stop them cocking their leg over. So whatever you do, keep it as close to age 3 as you can. I made this mistake. We all had COVID. My son was climbing out of a cot like a little ninja. And I thought, well, he's ready. He's ready. Let's take the side of the cot down. Hands down, they were the worst 3 nights of my entire parenting life to date. It was vile, awful. He wasn't ready. Couple of reasons being why he wasn't ready. They go from the safe space of having a cot with 4 little walls on or gates or whatever. Then you take it all down and that cot then becomes a massive room. They're a tiny person in a massive room. Okay, that's really overwhelming. Okay. Also, before the age of 3, telling a 2-year-old to stay in bed because they'll be tired, it's not going to cut it. They're not going to, you can put all the boundaries in place in the world if you want. 2-year-old's not going to understand that. So you're going to have a battle on your hands. So yeah, it's really common as well for people that when they've got another baby coming, they're like, oh, well, we feel really bad. Let's put a nice special princess room and you can have just don't do it. That would be my advice. So I get quite emotional.
Weird though, isn't it? Because I must be an exception to the rule, I think, because Phoebe's was about two and a couple of months, I think. And we'd popped her in her bed, but she slept through by this point. And we had a, I mean, she's still got it now, you know, the bed guard things you get so that they can't actually fall out. And we popped her in that and she'd helped kind of upcycle the bed, chosen the bedding and all this kind of stuff. And she was great. We never had a problem with her whatsoever. But I think because she slept through, she's quite now, she'll just go to bed, sleep through, never a problem. But I'm probably the exception on that one.
No, and that I've got one of my good friends, she put her little girl into a floor bed. She doesn't move. You know, and so it's not all of them, but if you can, it also makes sort of sleep training. If you've got a child that's got issues that needs to be trained, trying to do that when they're in a toddler bed with a free open space is really tricky. It's really tricky. So it's just something I always say. If as well you are going to move them into a toddler bed, practice it. So start the process in a night time. So don't, if they are still napping or anything like that, make sure that you're doing it at night. The reason being, remember I talked before about sleep pressure and melatonin production, you want to try and get at that sweet spot. So Mother Nature is on your side for them to go to sleep well, if that makes sense. And give them time to sort of play in the room and stuff like that, so they get to know a little bit, familiarize yourself with it, but not really play in the bed, because they need to know that the bed is for sleeping, not for jumping up and down on. That'll come later as they get older, but yeah, so that would be my advice on that. I do have a document on it as well, a free one, so if anyone wants to read it, have a little look.
Oh, perfect. How do people get that? Is it on your website? Or...
Yeah, so if you go to my website and go to my blogs, it's a big document. I got so emotional about that one because I was like, please don't do this, don't do this. But yeah, I've got some free blogs on there as well.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, we can include it on the bit after this. I'm really looking at my phone. Sorry, it's just because we had a question come through and I don't want to miss it. So it actually made me chuckle. I mean, I think it was meant to, because it's got lots of laughing emojis underneath. But it says, what age can a child developmentally and realistically be expected to sleep through? Not sure if my children are broken or just not meant to be able to do this yet.
Okay, this is the old added pressure, like we mentioned before, of sleeping through the night. Okay, so you will have some families that will say, my baby was 8 weeks old and they slept through the night. Good for you. People like that are hated. Because I was just like, what are you doing? So that it is possible from that age. Okay, realistically though, it's more likely to be 6 or 7 months, because they don't necessarily need a night feed. So they should be able, as long as they're having a nice big feed before bed, they shouldn't need a feed overnight. So that will help with the fact that they'll sleep through the night. It's whatever you're doing during that night that's the problem. So they will sleep through if you make those changes, because they are waking for a reason normally. It's not an exact science, but there's, I have like a load of sort of, when I work with families, we pick down, and once we start picking, we go, that's your problem. And then we work at troubleshooting it, and then we work at fixing it. Not that they're broken. A child is not broken.
No, she did put lovely faces on it.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of times, I think I actually said that when I hired a sleep consultant. I was like, he's broken, fix him. But yeah, so no, that all children are fixable. Their sleep is all fixable.
So it goes back to then cause and effect, possibly what you're doing in the day with the whole options thing. See, I was paying attention.
Top of the class.
Well, hey, get me. Have we got, I mean, that's the end of the questions that we've had in ready for tonight. Have we got any on Facebook or?
No, I think we've covered them all now.
Fab.
I've got loads to think about now. You've given me loads of food for thought.
And if anyone, does want to, drop me a message, any of the questions, get in touch. But yeah, it's a tricky subject because every kid's different and every parent's different. So yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So, Alex, from you, we need to know, what's your favourite thing about being a mum, and what's your top survival tip for motherhood? Doesn't have to be sleep related.
Oh, crying out loud. Right, okay. Favourite thing about being a mum?
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel like I've got a purpose.
Oh.
I've spent, 20 years in a career, not saying I hated it, but I was very obsessed by, money and success and targets and all that. And I thought that's who I was. And actually having my son, I've unpicked a whole new side to me, and I feel like I've got more of a purpose. So it's a bit soft, that, innit? But yeah, he's given me a bit of purpose.
I think lots of people can relate to that.
Yeah.
So he gives me purpose. And my top survival tip for motherhood, honestly, I just drink Coke Zero.
I thought you were going to bring up alcohol or something. I was thinking, oh my god.
No, honestly, this Diet Coke and Coke Zero. That's
or coffee.
Or coffee.
We will get you into coffee one day, Alex.
I have to be honest, I think your product's awesome. I just can't drink coffee. I love the concept behind what you ladies are doing. And that's why I reached out to you, because I love it. And then I felt really guilty because I thought, I can't stand coffee, but I just love what your brand is. And I know you're bringing out candles and I want to burn them, but then I don't like the smell of coffee. but my husband does. So maybe we could just burn one in a room that he can stay in when he's watching the golf.
In the shed, in the garden.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
I'm joking.
But no, I think what you guys are doing is awesome. But no, apart from coffee, I do this. And then talking's a good one, because I had a baby in lockdown and it was really yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
It was really rubbish. So but hey.
I can't imagine. We've said before, haven't we, almost hats off to women that were, well, families that were having babies during lockdown. We were just at the very end. So I mean, I think Emily was born on the Thursday and it was the Monday they just started letting partners back in. But I can't imagine how hard that would have been for sort of anybody over that period. So absolute hats off to you.
Yeah, it was crap, especially when you've gone through, you know, IVF or any sort of, you know, not being able to have your husband with you, which was just a bit naff. But hey, we have our little miracle boy, albeit he was an awful sleeper, but now I have a new career and a business from it. So every cloud.
Which sorted that out. So we will include all the details of your website and everything and how people can get hold of you, so anyone can reach out to you, questions, look up your free documents, and potentially book packages and things via you. So we'll share all of that.
That'd be great.
In terms of us, thank you very much for watching as usual, and again, please get involved. Check out, I'll put this one on YouTube so it's there for everybody to watch. We'll do probably a guest blog hopefully from it, please Alex, if that's all right.
Okay.
And yeah, please just keep liking, sharing, following, getting involved, support the #MumsAreFine campaign. Anything you can do to support us, we are really grateful.
And thanks for having me. I think I only swore about once as well, so I'm really impressed with myself.
Did
Did very well.
Thanks.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All-
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Take care.
All the
Everyone.
best. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.